Dolores, we've been told that the Daughters of the American Revolution are very important to you. Why is that important? What can you tell us?
First of all, I was a soldier. I was overseas. It's very important to be on a little bit of land with the flag sticking up. And that also makes me feel grounded.
In what way?
Well, my family, I kind of felt estranged from my family, like I didn't have any roots, and it gave me roots. I belong to this country, and that makes all the difference in the world.
Now, how did you find your ancestor, and what did you feel when you found his name? Your ancestor, the DAR patriot?
Through DAR.
Oh, they already had him as a patriot then.
I don't know.
Well, they probably did. And so how long have you been in the DAR?
I've been in 5 years.
5 years. It does make a difference, doesn't it?
It does make a difference. This is my country. I mean, we took it from the Native Americans, but I said it's my.
Well, we gave some of it back.
Yeah, poor things.
I understand that after you graduated from college, you made the decision to go into the military. Could you please tell how riding on the train with your sister and seeing all the things you saw, because you said it was important to you, how did that change and how you ended up in the military? So what did you see when you were on the train outside? It was just you two little girls, wasn't
Yeah,
it?
it was just my sister and I.
How
Yeah.
old were you?
I was 5. My mother went the first year, but
She went that.
But then after that, we went by ourselves. And traveler's aid with the trains, they would watch over us, except they didn't really. They were very busy, and we were just told to stay in the station. But we went up to Kansas, and during the Dust Bowl, chickens had hatched from the eggs because it was so hot.
Oh, my
And
word.
I remember seeing them running all over the track. And but anyway, we changed trains there and went to Denver, and then we stayed there on the station all day long. And from there, we went to Portland, and then up to Monroe.
How old was your sister?
She was 2.5 years. She was 7.
So you were very young.
Yes.
Well, your mother must have been trustworthy to send you like that. How did you eat? Did you have a little basket, or did they feed you, or what?
Well, we ate it. We had food with us, but we also ate in the dining car sometimes. We would have to walk between the cars. I was always afraid that I would fall through and crash to the cracks because there was a click, click, click. You could see the ground underneath.
I remember that.
You remember that?
Mm-hmm.
And some places they didn't have dining cars, so we would get out of the train.
Just you two little girls?
Yeah, and they would hit a gong, and they would take us into this place where we could order what we wanted. And after it was time, then we would hear a gong, and we'd have to get back on the train, or it would take off before we got on. So we were always kind of scared. And
Well, I can imagine. Just such little girls. Did you eat a lot of desserts when you could have anything you wanted?
sometimes. How did you know?
Two little girls. I was a little girl once. So where did you sleep? Just in your chair then? Or?
No, we slept in a upper or lower berth, and when we were older, we used to get up there. I felt sorry for the people down below because we would fight sometimes in the berth.
Like sisters.
Yeah, but if we had to go to the bathroom, we'd get out and walk by all these curtain segments back to the bathroom, but it was very safe, and you know, people didn't do bad things in those days that we knew about anyway.
Mm-hmm. So now, when you traveled like this, obviously you were quite brave little girls.
We were always anxious to see my father. We loved him a lot, and always anxious to get home.
But you weren't afraid to go out in the world. You'd done this already. Because riding on a train, even for adults that far, could make them not want to do anything else. But it had the opposite effect on you, didn't it? You obviously weren't afraid to go places. Now, where did you go to college?
I went to college at Washington State University.
And what did you major in?
Dietetics, institutional economics, it was called. Minored in chemistry. And I applied for internships. I was accepted every place. because WSU at the time was the second leading school for dietetics.
Why did you choose that path so early on?
Well, I wanted to be a musician, but
Oh, you did?
my father said that would be useless, so
What kind of musical instrument or
piano.
piano? So you had a piano in his home or in your home with your mom?
I had a piano in my home, and I had a piano. My mother was a music major.
Oh, she was?
And I had a piano at my stepmother's, which belonged to my mother. And once she heard me play, she donated the piano and bought an organ. She thought it was the radio. She wanted to know what station it was on. Once she heard me play, I never saw that piano again. It's in the church in Monroe.
So what kind of music did you like to play?
Chopin and
Chopin.
Rachmaninoff and Beethoven.
Oh, you could have come to my house. I like those. So when you went into college, did you just forego music, or did you keep up with your music?
I took one class, and that was it. I was taking science. I had so much chemistry, and I had never had any of that before. I just had heard that dietetics was an open profession, so I grabbed onto that.
So did you complete college at that time? Or?
Yes, I did.
And where did you go to work?
Then after that, I had to do an internship. And
where was that?
I had a choice of any place, but it cost money. And so I didn't have money, and I had been a burden to my family long enough, I felt. And I didn't want to burden them anymore. So the military, and I had some friends going into the military. And
so where did you actually physically join the military?
I joined in Oklahoma City.
In Oklahoma City. And what branch were you in?
I was in the Army.
And where were you stationed? What was your commission or your title in the?
I was second lieutenant.
Second lieutenant.
In the Women's Medical Specialist Corps, it was called then.
So what were your duties as a second lieutenant? Because that's not a greenie.
Well, my duties were to learn how to practice the art of dietetics and to serve the soldiers that were wounded in the service. And
was that pretty difficult? I've heard many jokes about Army food, so was that true, and how did you work around it, or if it wasn't true?
Well, we didn't do a lot of cooking.
But did you give them ideas on what would be good to cook, or?
We planned some of the menus. We planned the special menus, and dietetics in those days, we had special diets, whether it was a regular or light or pureed or salt-free or diabetic.
Oh, they had those then?
Uh-huh. And so we would plan, and I would talk to the people and see their likes and dislikes and try to modify the menu according to their preferences.
I thought all soldiers just ate the same stuff, but they don't.
Well, they do unless they're sick, but my job when they get sick is to help them to get well and to get food in them that's how you get well.
Well, I'm glad to hear they had something like that, because in the movies and things, you certainly don't see that. Now, you worked at Walter Reed?
Well, actually, yeah, I worked at Walter Reed, but I was stationed there. That's where I had my internship.
So where did you live when you were at Walter Reed?
I lived in Delano Hall, which was on the campus, and Walter Reed's now moved, but that's where I lived. But it was wonderful to live in Washington, D.C. All kinds of exciting things. And
tell us some of the exciting things you saw and did.
Oh, I saw Senator Taft lying in state. I decided one evening to go down there, and I put on my uniform and went down, and it was dusk. I don't know, surely it wasn't safe, and I don't know, I can't remember how I got there, but I walked around. I can still remember the clicks of, I was the only one there. My heels click, 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 click as I walked around and looked at the tomb and saw the soldiers standing at attention, and it was everything that happened, you could see it if you wanted to, and it was wonderful. We got to go to the tomb of the unknown soldier many times actually. And
were you wearing the uniform that's behind you on these hangers?
Yes.
So that we can just imagine young Dolores walking.
Yeah, not as green as anything, but but taking it all in.
So other than the cemetery, what did you see around Washington that impressed you? Did you go to the Capitol or the?
Oh yeah, I went to the Capitol. I went to the Institute of Pathology, and I thought it was fascinating, all the specimens they had
What
there.
kind of specimens did they have?
Oh, things that would upset you if I told you about.
Oh no, come on, just you can tell us.
Different organs and babies at different stages of development, and they had them preserved in some kind of fluid, and it was.
Well, I'm sure it was for scientific research.
Oh, yeah, well, it was just really wonderful. And during my internship, I got to do special things, like we went to Baltimore, where the spice company was, and we saw them manufacturing spice, putting it in bottles, and
That would be interesting.
And everything. We went to where they were cutting meat, and they had a rabbi there for kosher food, and the poor little cows would come in, and they would grab them by their hoof and hoist them up and slit their throat.
Did you watch that?
Yeah, we watched that. One of the cows got loose and was galloping all around, and everyone was jumping on tables trying to escape this frightened, terrified cow.
Maybe he saw what happened to the others. So they finally got him.
Yeah.
So what were some of the other things you've seen in Washington?
In Washington. Oh, we had a lot of senators and House people come in. I got to see the presidential suite up in the Walter Reed. It was very elegant. And
well, describe it to us, because we don't get to go there. Just people like you get to go there.
It was, well, I remember the bathroom in particular. It was so large you could have a meeting in there, and with a sunken tub. And that was during those times. You were lucky if you had a bathtub inside the house, and so it was just very elegant to me. The senators and the representatives that you talked to, they would want to know. I would ask them their likes and dislikes and try to cater to them.
Oh, I wanted to ask you about that. I have a little birdie told me that something about Mrs. Eisenhower and how she liked her bacon.
I know, that was terrible.
Well, tell our
She liked her bacon just barely cooked, but not crisp, so that it was still limp.
So it kind of jiggled.
Yeah.
Now, you met Madam Chang?
I did not meet her.
Oh, you didn't meet her.
But she was a patient there, Madam Chiang Kai-shek, and Prince Bernhard, and we had someone there who was still in an iron lung, and he would give a radio announcement and program every day. And
oh, really?
Bob Hope came to the hospital once, and I was busy talking to someone, so I thought, well, I'll see him later. He'll be back. But of course, he never came back. But all kinds of exciting things going on. And when the president was there.
Which president was this?
Well, it was during Eisenhower's time.
Okay.
And
was his wife a patient there, and that's why you knew about her bacon?
No. Okay. But they had guards at the gates, so it was. And I was surprised they let me in, but they did.
Well, that suit looks very official. Did they salute you?
Oh, I don't remember.
Oh, I'm sure they did. A little birdie told me that General Pershing from the First World War kind of liked to chase the ladies down the hallway. Is that true?
He did. You know, he was old and elderly and didn't know what he was
Obviously
doing.
not too elderly. So what would they do? Just pat him on the head? Or?
Yeah, just try to escape him.
That made me laugh. Now, what kind of things did you do there at Walter Reed?
Well, I mainly interviewed patients and attended classes. And
now, when you say you interviewed patients, was that for an intake or just for information?
Well, every kind of a disease, like hepatitis, for example, we had 2 wards of patients with hepatitis. The important thing was to feed their wounded livers, and they needed extra nourishment for that.
What would you give them if somebody with hepatitis?
Extra protein. And,
what was available then? Because the war, well, no, the war wasn't on then, but what was available for
meat.
just not hamburger?
Oh, anything that's protein.
So it did work, though.
Yeah, and gave them drinks in between sometimes. And
they must have loved you because you got them all the good stuff. Now, how...
they were sick. I saw a soldier once walking down the aisle and walking down the corridor, and it was during the Korean War. He had one eye, and his face was horribly disfigured. And when I walked by, I averted my eyes, and I've regretted that all my life. I should have said hello to him and made him feel human. And
well, it sounds like you more than made up for it in the other things you did. Nobody's perfect. So. Now, how long were you at Walter Reed?
Just a year.
Where did you go from there?
From Walter Reed, I went to Madigan briefly, but there weren't any cute boys there, and I applied.
Oh, well, let's get out of there.
I applied to go to Germany.
And you said, put me where there are cute boys.
Right.
I take it that's where you met your husband.
That's where
then.
I met my husband.
Did he fall in the category of a cute boy?
Yeah, he was supposed to pick me up at the train station, but
oh, you didn't waste any time. First one you saw.
but I couldn't speak German well enough, and I told him the wrong time that the train was coming, because I couldn't read the schedule very well. So,
now he was in the Army also, wasn't he?
Yes, he was.
What was his position?
He was a warrant officer, and he had not finished college yet. He said he wanted to be a doctor, but he was too dumb to do that. And I said, no, you're not. Yeah, I knew he was very smart.
But why did he pick you up? That was just
well, he worked in the kitchen. He was the warrant officer for the food supply.
So what happened on that first ride? Did you ride in the front seat with him or in the back?
No, I ended up going in a taxi to the hospital and passing him by as he was coming down to look for me.
I bet you've laughed about that since.
No.
No, it wasn't funny, huh? So when you got there, how did you actually meet him then?
I met him sitting at the table in the dining hall that first time.
Were you sitting there, or was he, or were you both?
I was sitting there, and he walked up, and I looked at him. He had those big blue eyes.
He still does have them, doesn't he?
Yes, he does.
And you said, sit down, blue eyes?
No. I thought, oh, well, he's so beautiful, but he had a wedding ring on.
Oh.
And it looked like it was really his brother's ring that had been killed in the war.
Oh, so he's wearing his memory then.
Yeah. So
he wasn't married after all. That's good.
Yeah.
So you were sitting there and you saw old blue eyes, and then what happened? Did he sit down?
No, no, we just went on our business, but I thought, oh, he was so good looking. But he's married, so I can't pay any attention to him. But
how long did it take you to find out that that was his brother's ring and not a wedding ring?
A while.
A while. So were you in close proximity in your jobs at all?
Not too close.
Not close.
Yeah. He worked in another office.
Well, the story gets more involved, so how did you finally not see him on the airplane when you got there and you saw him in the dining room? How did this story progress? You saw him sometimes, and
yeah, we worked together. He worked in the kitchen, and I would go in the kitchen to my office, and so we would run into each other once in a while, and I just
kept staring at his blue eyes.
And but it was quite interesting flying in an airplane. At that time, we flying to Germany, we were strapped along the outside of the bulk of the airplane. The inside was safe for equipment. So it was before airplane was not a thing you ever took. So it was a kind of a...
You were on the outside of the airplane?
No,
on
the inside,
but
on the edge of the airplane, not sitting in chairs.
Cargo first, yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, when did you and your husband get married?
After we got out of the Army.
Oh, after you got out of the Army. Did both of you go to Germany?
Yes.
Tell us about Germany. It was really different then. What did you see and what did you think? And
Well, Germany was, it was post-war, and most of the time you think post-war it's over and everything just goes back to normal, but of course it doesn't. And Germany, there was still a lot of, I mean, this is quite a few years later, there was still bombed out block after block, and
Were people living in
but
the
no
ruins? Or-
rubble in the streets. But there were.
What town were you in?
I was in Landstuhl.
Longstrel, okay, where the air base is.
No, the air base is at Ramstein.
Oh, Ramstein now. Oh, yeah, okay. What did you see the people doing? How did they live? Since everything had been bombed.
Everyone was very hungry, very poor. They had been desolated from the war and hadn't recovered.
Did they resent?
A lot of wood destroyed. They would strap. They would check the people out as they left the base, the workers, to go home, and people would strap empty milk cartons to their legs under their pants to have fuel to burn in their stoves to keep warm. And people would strap legs to steaks and meat to their legs, trying to steal it because they didn't have food. People were very short of food. And I remember on a leave seeing people walk. I mean, there was no sanitation. You couldn't have anything fresh. All of the plumbing had been destroyed. The milk was irradiated. You couldn't have fresh milk. So everything was, the area just had not recovered yet. And people were polite, but some of the people you knew hated you. And you were the enemy, and you were the conquerors.
Oh, because they were Germans.
And we were Americans, and we didn't. I imagine that's the way it is today in the Middle East.
Did you ever have any incidents where people were rude or threatening to you personally?
I just did not feel safe.
You did not. Well, you probably weren't.
And we went to Holland. And coming back, the guards were quite cruel to us.
What did they do?
Hostile, hateful, speaking, of course, in their language.
But you knew they were.
It's just scary. It's not your own language. You don't know what they're saying. And I had grown up during the war, hearing stories of atrocities from this country and from Japan, and it took me a long, long time to start talking to Germans about. Of course, I've never spoken with a German that actually admitted they did anything wrong, but
now, when you were in Germany, did you? It says ask about the Handel's Messiah. Did you see that, or?
Oh,
That's one of my favorite pieces of music.
I love singing it, and they had a program where you could sing the Handel's Messiah with the Germans.
Oh, that must have been thrilling.
Well, it was interesting because it was a time when I didn't trust the Germans at all. They didn't trust us at all, and yet we were singing this song about the birth of Christ, and it just it made me awestruck, kind of peace, and it was just something special about it. I don't know.
They
We
probably
were
felt
singing
the same
in
way.
unison about the glory of God. It was wonderful.
Where did you do this?
In Kaiserslautern.
In Kaiserslautern.
I had a car over there.
You did?
Uh-huh.
How come you had a car?
I had a car because, just because I did.
Okay, just because you did. What kind of car did you have?
It was a Thunderbird and very fancy.
Ooh, what color?
Red.
Oh, I thought it'd be blue like your husband's eyes. Now, how long were you in Germany?
I was in Germany probably two and a half years.
And so
I got to see all their customs. That was really neat.
what customs impressed you?
Two little children walking down with their warm coats on, with holding sticks with a pretzel on the top and flags hanging down, and all these.
What was the pretzel for?
I'd never figured that out.
You couldn't go over and eat it then.
And I couldn't figure out what they were. I mean, all these beautiful little customs that they had were so unique at the time. It was just charming.
It sounds charming. Now, did you and your husband come back stateside about the same time, or?
I think he came back a month or two earlier.
Where did he go when he got back?
He went back to his home in Michigan.
In Michigan. So you're still in Germany, and he's in Michigan, and you're not sitting at the same table, and he's not driving you. How did you get together?
Oh, well, we were in love.
Oh, you were in love. Love conquers all.
Yes.
Where were you married?
In fact, we were married in Oklahoma City, but he said he wanted to go to school and be a doctor, and that he was too dumb, and so I worked with him in school at the university, through the University of Maryland, and helped him see that he could pass English. And when he got out, he finished high school and took algebra 1, 2, and 3 at the same time.
So you were his strength to get through.
He was my strength to get through too.
So he did become a doctor, didn't he?
He did.
Where did he open his practice?
He opened his practice in Tillamook, Oregon.
And what kind
first in Portland, but then we moved to Tillamook, where he had a solo practice. He was a doctor, and he brought in, they were so short of doctors there, and he brought in other doctors and arranged to have specialists come to do special surgery at the hospital. And the equipment was quite bad at the hospital, and but he was also a coroner and a health officer, and improved the health office, and started working with the state there. But
well, he was plenty smart enough to be a doctor, wasn't he?
yeah, he was. And once he realized he was the little town we were in the population during salmon season, it was on the coast, or during this season or hunting season, the population would more than quadruple. And it was so bad in the summer that all the doctors, except he, would leave town. And
everybody came to him.
He was driving with his head out the window, trying to stay awake, and jabbing himself with things, and all kinds of things were happening. And then, I was home with the kids, and I would get a phone call that someone had died, and I'd have to call around to the police to get some help to them.
Oh, because of his coroner job?
Yeah. And we had animals. We had a farm at that time.
You said children. How many children do you have?
4.
And what are they, boys and girls? Or?
2 boys, 2 girls.
Oh, that's very tidy. Now, you said your father was a doctor also?
Yes.
Could you tell us a little bit about him and his practice?
Yeah, well, he always insisted on everyone paying something, whether it was a pail of berries or
Where did he
a
practice?
chicken. He practiced in Monroe, Washington. Okay. And my memories as a child were going with him on all these house calls through these things that didn't hardly look like roads. He knew exactly where he was going, and would whistle as he got out of stopped the car, people waiting on the porch for him to come because they didn't have cars, and he would get out with his little doctor bag and go in. And
did you wait in the car, or did you go in with him?
We waited in the car.
Waited in the car. Now, medicine obviously is very important to you, but let's go back to the service. What did it mean to you to serve our country, and how do you feel about the military and service now?
It meant everything, to care for those poor wounded soldiers. The military is very important, and it's a tough life for the wives, the children. When we got out of when we were retired, we had just paid for 4 kids. We had to move every year because or every other year, buy furniture, sell it because it didn't fit. We had to pay for some of the furniture moving, and so it was by the time we got out of the Army, we didn't have anything. We had paid for our kids to go to school, to college. We had 4 kids in college, and so my husband worked 2 jobs when he finally got out, and so that we could buy a house. And I would see everyone around with their fancy houses. My husband was a doctor with this little, our house is always the smallest one usually.
But he was a doctor, the old-fashioned kind that cared more about humanity
Yeah,
than
yeah.
his wallet.
Yeah.
Now, I hear that you have some outstanding relatives, especially your grandmother, Amanda Rebecca Golden. Would you like to tell us a little bit about her?
Oh, my grandmother, Amanda. She married, she was 14.
14.
She married someone who was 29. He had cared for his mother and spinster aunts until he could finally marry at 29. And
So he'd never been married?
no. And she gave birth on the prairie in a sod hut by herself at the age of 15.
Oh my, where was it?
Think about that.
Well, tell us a little bit about what happened or what you know about this. Who did she give birth to?
Oh, she gave birth to one of my uncles, Uncle Fred, but she ended up having 8 children.
Was that the only one she delivered herself, or?
Oh, I'm sure most of them were delivered themselves. You didn't have doctors in those days on the prairie, and the Oklahoma was not even the state then. And when they went to Oklahoma, finally, first of all, there was an Indian uprising, and the soldiers moved into a fort in western Kansas. And then they went back by Wichita to Rose Hill. And from there, they went down to Oklahoma, and it was just. What did you ask me?
Well, I just wanted to kind of get the feel for what your relative was when she was having her baby, but you quite explained
I
that.
wouldn't know that. Yeah.
Yeah. Now you've accomplished.
She made sure all of her kids went to college. She hadn't
all
even
8 of them?
Yeah. And
How'd she do that?
well, she taught them the importance of education, and she. When she died, she still had an outhouse, a dirt cellar.
But she had 8 college graduates.
She had 8 college graduates. One was a pharmacist. My dad was a doctor. One was a superintendent of schools. One was taught chemistry and physics. I mean, one was a girl. She was a teacher. And one of the children had died of an abortion when her husband came back and gave her a bad disease, and she had to abort herself. So. But
then she had 8 children that, through her humble efforts, really made it in the world.
Yes, yes.
Especially your husband. Now you've had so many life experiences. What would you say if one of your grandchildren came up and said, "Grandma, what do I need to know about life?" What would you say?
Hang in there.
Hang in there.
Do the best you can, in spite of all your circumstances, and keep the faith.
So, what was the hardest thing you think you've ever had to overcome? So that you're an example for them. What was the hardest thing?
I think life was hard.
Life was hard. Do you still sing and play piano?
Not well. Not well. I have arthritis. And besides, when I play, people talk to each other and I miss out on the conversation. I don't have an audience anymore.
It's sort of like playing in a restaurant or something, huh? So have you and your husband been able to travel since you've been out of the military together? Or are you just too busy?
No, we've never taken advantage of that.
Well, you're getting to be middle-aged. It's about time you do that. Why did you end up here in Olympia?
Oh, was close to Fort Lewis. My husband, once he got out, he still volunteers, teaches some at Madigan to help the young students. He had residence when he was in the Army, and teaching the art of medicine is something that the doctors need to learn, and he's there to teach it to them.
Well, you and your husband, your family are really amazing Americans, and I think you've upheld our country's values very well, and I'm so glad that I've gotten to talk to you. We have just a couple more seconds. Is there anything you want to say to posterity? You
Nope.
said hang in there. Any
Yeah.
other advice?
Nope.
That's it, huh? Well,
Our country is important,
it is, and it always will be, hopefully.
hopefully.
Yeah, we don't want to go into politics. This has been an upbeat,
I know.
an upbeat interview.
I'm
We
not
don't-
going to say it.
So
I hope that we can learn to love each other always.
we need to
we're,
sing the
we're
Messiah
Americans.
together. We need to sing the Messiah together. They have, yes, they do have sing-ins. I sang in a sing-in here, and I was an alto because those were the seats closest to the front.
I was
so-
an alto too.
Well, I wasn't. I just wanted to sit in front, so I kept talking really deep. Well, are you going to sing in the Handel's Messiah this year at the Washington
no,
Center?
no, no.
You'd be one of the best voices. Thank you so much.
Oh, you're welcome.